It is early Thursday morning, December 7th, and welcome to another edition of Bracket Science, where we dissect the entire college basketball world. Another year of the Jimmy V Classic has come and gone, and boy, did we have some great matchups. We'll discuss our outlook on these matchup of these big games, along with other great games that went on around the nation on Tuesday and Wednesday, including number 12 Texas visiting number 8 Marquette last night. We just dropped our first bracketology of the year on Tuesday. We will discuss who's in, who's out, who are some of the top seeds for March Madness tournament, if it were right now. Finally, we will preview a huge weekend of college basketball coming up. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the Jimmy V Classic. The first game of the Jimmy V Classic consisted of number 11 Florida Atlantic and number 20 Illinois. Florida Atlantic was favored by 2.5, but Illinois brought home the victory 98-89. What a great game this was to start off the Jimmy V Classic. To get started with Illinois, we watched a star get born, and I don't mean Bradley Cooper, I don't mean Lady Gaga, I mean Marcus Domask. He had a huge night in primetime game. He had 33 points on 15 of 21, shooting a great field goal percentage. Believe it or not, this game started off very slow. No one could make a bucket. There seemed to be a lid over the rim. Then it seemed no one could miss, especially Marcus Domask. Last podcast, we asked how it was possible to stop Vlad Golden, and the only way to do that is to get him in foul trouble, it seemed, which is what happened in this game, maybe by luck, maybe by Illinois strategy. He picked up 2 fouls quick, and he was held to only 19 minutes, in which FAU was a completely different team with him on the floor and not on the floor. He still added 23 points, but it was not enough to stop this Illinois squad. We knew it was going to be a great guard play matchup coming in, especially with FAU's guards in John L. Davis and Elijah Martin. But in reality, Terrence Shannon was the best player on the floor. This is Terrence Shannon's 4th time playing in the Jimmy V Classic, which is a crazy stat. He did it twice at Texas Tech, and then he transferred to Illinois, in which he has also done it twice. He also had 33 points on top of Domask, and he shot 10 of 14, also a great field goal percentage. Terrence Shannon came into the game averaging 20 a game. It is now going to increase with that 33 points. The big question coming in for Illinois was who could help Terrence Shannon, and they found a star in Marcus Domask. They combined for 66 points. Great two-man game there. The only other Illini in double figures was Justin Harmon, who had only 10, most of their scoring coming from Domask and Shannon. FAU's scoring was a little bit more balanced. Vladislav Golden, still led them with 23 points in only 19 minutes. John L. Davis added 19, Elijah Martin 13, Gaffney and Carroll both added 10. Illinois as a team shot 63% from the field. Great shooting at Madison Square Garden. Illinois travels to Knoxville to take on the number 17 team in the nation, Tennessee Volunteers, on Saturday in another great matchup. FAU's next big one is December 23rd against the number 1 team in the nation in Arizona. The second game of the Jimmy V Classic was a top 10 matchup. Number 9 North Carolina and number 5 UConn. UConn beat them by 11, 87-76 in an extremely chippy game. A lot of talking back and forth. Very great environment in Madison Square Garden. Armando Bacot and Cam Spencer got into it in the first half. They both ended up getting technical fouls. Dan Hurley and Hubert Davis were fired up on the sideline all game. It was a great matchup. A lot of fouls, a lot of good basketball. UConn played great defensively. It was a high-scoring game, but it was a run-and-gun kind of game. UConn held North Carolina to a good shooting percentage. North Carolina may have been the more athletic team, if you can believe that, but UConn was the obvious better basketball team in this game. I think they're better coached, they're more disciplined, they play together, they play for each other, they play with a certain energy that North Carolina just did not have and could not match. It was a well-rounded effort for all of UConn players. They were led by Cam Spencer, who had 23 points on 8 of 14 shooting. Alex Caravan also had a big night. He had 18 points and 9 rebounds. And the best point guard in the nation, if I say so, Tristan Newton, He stayed consistent, not his best game, still added 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, while freshman Solomon Ball had a breakout game for him, scoring 13 points, only averaging 6 points a game. He scored 13, knocked down 3 huge threes that were daggers to North Carolina. UConn's other big star, Donovan Clingan, the 7'2 center, he needs to be a little bit better if this team wants to make a Final Four run and maybe repeat as national champions. He had only 8 points on 3 of 7 shooting. He didn't look great to the eye test. He's dominating the bad teams UConn plays. He's doubled his scoring from last year and obviously a big minute increase. But when it comes to these big games, when he's facing another 7-footer, Hunter Dickinson, in this case Armando Bacot, he hasn't been great on the offensive end. He needs to be a little bit better for the UConn to take the next step. On the other side, RJ Davis continued scoring at a great rate, adding 26 points and 4 threes. He was their leading scorer. Armando Bacot added another double-double to his resume with 13 points, 13 rebounds, and Harrison Ingram looked good again with 20 points. This big three got no other help from anyone else. Cormac Ryan had a rough game. He had only 6 points, 0 for 6 from 3. A lot of his shots going in and out. They didn't look bad, they just wouldn't go in. North Carolina has 10 days off following this loss, where they have another tough stretch, taking on Kentucky in the CBS Sports Classic, then Oklahoma later that week in the Jumpman Invitational. UConn, they take on Arkansas Pine Bluff in a game where they might win by 1,000,000 on Saturday. But then next Friday, they take on Gonzaga in the Continental Tire Kickoff. This should be a great matchup. The Jimmy V Classic was without a doubt the highlight of the college basketball night, but there were other great games that went on around the nation, starting with number 23 Wisconsin visiting Michigan State in a game which Michigan State desperately needed to win. Coming into the game 4-3, Michigan State did not want to drop to 4-4, yet they did, getting blown out 70-57. This game was not close. And I'm going to say it, as of right now, Michigan State, welcome to the NIT tournament. They are not a tournament team as of right now. Outside of Tyson Walker, this team does not look good whatsoever. This was the perfect game for Michigan State to get back on track, a home game, a good environment against a good Wisconsin team, get a ranked win, get back on teams' radars, and it just didn't look like they wanted to be there. I checked the score at halftime of the FAU-Illinois game, and it was 20-8 Wisconsin. As Michigan State in a home environment, a game you need to win, you got to get off to a good start, and you're down 20-8 right away. This team does not look good. They should not be in the NCAA tournament as of right now. Something needs to change over there. We'll see how they go going forward. Moving on, the Battle of the Wildcats, Villanova at Kansas State, a game that went into overtime. And what a shot by Tyler Perry late in the game. 3 seconds left, knocks down a huge three on a crazy step back, and Kansas State would win the game 72-71, just destroying Kyle Neptune's hopes of getting off of the hot seat. Villanova drops to 6-4 on the year, while Kansas State moves to 7-2. Nova needed this win badly. This would be good for their resume come March, and Villanova, expect them to drop out of the NCAA tournament as of right now. They don't look good. Kyle Neptune on the hot seat. Moving on, Indiana visited Michigan, and Indiana won 78-75 in a good game. Indiana's now 7-1 and 2-0 in Big Ten play. Michigan drops below 500. They got some serious problems going on over there. Let's move on to Seton Hall at number 6, Baylor. Baylor handled them easily, 78-60. Baylor now 9-0 on the year. Tough schedule coming up for them, though, playing Michigan State, who we just talked about. Maybe Michigan State can prove me wrong in the battle of the green teams. But then they take on Duke right after Michigan State. Tough stretch ahead. One thing to note about Baylor, they are currently the number 1 rated offensive efficiency at KenPom. They got a great offense. Moving on to Providence at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, the number 19th team in the country. And Oklahoma blew them out 72-51. They started the game on a 12-0 run. Oklahoma 8-0 on the year, and Providence is no slouch. They were 7-1 going into the game, now obviously 7-2. Good win for the Oklahoma Sooner squad. Watch out for them. Now let's move into Wednesday night's games, December 6th. Last night, the game of the night was number 12 Texas visiting number 8 Marquette, and it did not end up being much of a game at all. Marquette blew them out by 21, 86-65 in a Shaka Smart revenge game taking on his old team. And Tyler Kolek, looking like the Big East preseason player of the year, he had a huge night, 28 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Texas actually got off to an early lead early in the game. Max Absmith hit 3 threes in the first minute, just throwing up heat checks and knocking down time after time. But after that, it was all Marquette the rest of the game. Marquette was just the obvious better team at home. Tyler Kolek was the star in this game, no doubt, but he had some help. Cam Jones put up 17 points, knocked down 5 threes, and Chase Ross had a good game off the bench, added an efficient 12 points. As said for Texas, Max Absmith, he was their only scoring, so this entirety of this game, he had 25 points on 10 of 19 shooting. Their only other double-digit scorer was Chandel Weaver with 10 off the bench. Not a lot of scoring from this Texas team. Good defense by Marquette. Texas has a lot of solid players on their team. They're a deep team, got a great starting lineup. Their 4 starters, Dylan Mitchell, Caden Shedrick, Brock Cunningham, and Tyrese Hunter, all very solid players, may I remind you. They combined for just a total of 24 points between the 4 of them. They need to get more out of them. Joe Lunardi over at ESPN, who does a great job, he always releases his bracketology every single week. And he weirdly had Texas as an 8 seed in his most recent bracketology, which got a lot of controversy on the Twitter world. It was very strange, as Texas was ranked 12th in the nation, but as an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. You think there's 4, that would mark them around the 28 to 32 area in terms of best teams in the nation. But when you look at their resume, as of right now, it is not that great. You can argue what their best win of the year is. It could be at home against Wyoming, where they beat them by 23. Or your next best win is Louisville, who we all know has been so bad the last couple of years. They beat them on a neutral site, and quite frankly, they shouldn't have won this game. They won it by 1 on a buzzer beater by Max Absmith. Their 2 losses have come to great teams, great Big East schools, UConn, now Marquette. We had them as a 3 seed in our first bracketology. After this loss and their resume slowly declining as of now, expect them to be on the 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 line. They don't look great as of now. They do not play anyone even worth noting until the Big 12 play starts. This is not until January 6th against Texas Tech. Their only 2 major games in the non-conference schedule was UConn and Marquette, and they got beat by them both. So we'll see how it goes for Texas. They may be in danger of falling kind of low in the seeding in March Madness. But let's move back to Marquette. They just played a great game. I have Marquette winning the Big East, and they certainly have looked the part. I can't wait to see these Big East matchups between Marquette, Creighton, and UConn. They're all top 10 teams as of right now in the AP poll, and they are certainly 3 of the best teams in the nation. They have all looked incredible. Marquette does not play anyone worth mentioning until they visit Providence on December 20th. That should be a tough environment at Providence. Marquette looks great. Expect them to keep moving up the AP poll. There was one other game worth noting last night. It was South Carolina visiting number 24 Clemson, the battle of 2 unbeatens. South Carolina and Clemson both coming into the game 7-0. And Clemson took them down 72-67 in a good game. They both looked like undefeated teams. They both looked solid. All 5 Clemson starters scored in double figures. Chauncey Wiggins led them with 15. PJ Hall was right behind him with 14. And Ian Shiflin also added a double-double with 12 and 12. For South Carolina, the Ohio State transfer 2 years ago, Meechie Johnson, he's looked elite so far this year. He added 26 points. He's a great point guard in the SEC. Clemson visits TCU on Saturday, and South Carolina has an incredibly easy schedule coming up before they start SEC play. I don't expect them to lose any more games until the SEC starts. Wednesday was a great night of college hoops. Let's introduce a new segment called our Worry Wart Meter. We rank on a scale of 1 to 100 how worried we are about teams that have not looked the part, have not looked as good as they should have been. Let's start with Villanova. We are 90% worried about them. They won the battle for Atlantis. Since then, they have lost to St. Joseph's, Drexel, and Kansas State. Nothing going right for this Villanova team. They're ranked 35th at KenPom still, but if the tournament were to start today, I have a hard time seeing that they would be in. Not even in the first 4 games. Villanova, 90% on the Worry Wart Meter. Next up, let's talk about Michigan State, who we have them at 70% on our Worry Wart Meter. They're 4-4 on the year with losses to Arizona, Duke, James Madison, and Wisconsin. These are 4 solid teams outside. We thought James Madison may be a tough loss, but they have looked the part so far this year. They have been in the top 25 ever since they beat Michigan State. On a positive note, they are beating teams that they should be beating by a lot. Michigan State has been taking care of the games that they should be winning. But what worries me was that performance against Wisconsin that we talked about earlier, where they got ran out of their own gym in a must-win game. That says a lot about a team. Michigan State, 70% on our Worry Wart Meter. Now let's talk about Duke. We have them at 55% on our Worry Wart Meter. A little bit more worried than not worried about Duke. They have wins against not appealing teams such as Dartmouth, Bucknell, LaSalle, Southern Indiana, and Michigan State, a good win. But as we just talked about, they're 4-4 on the year. Their losses came to Arizona, which is a fine loss, and at Arkansas, very tough environment. And now Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech, 2 games in a row, another must-win game for Duke. And they got beat by Georgia Tech and Stoudemire's squad over there. This team is not looking like a preseason number 2 team in the nation. I still think they're going to be all right and will make the NCAA tournament, maybe win a game or 2. I don't see them making a run as of now unless John Shire can get his squad looking a lot better. We are 55% worried about the Duke Blue Devils. Let's move on to Kentucky, who took that loss against UNC Wilmington. We are only 15% worried about Kentucky. They're a young team. They're going to figure it out. They're disciplined. They had that Miami hangover that we talked about on the last pod. They have so much talent. I think they'll be fine. I don't actually hate that loss against UNC Wilmington as much as most people did. So I think UNC Wilmington may make the NCAA tournament this year. They'll be fighting in their conference with Charleston to make the tournament. We're only 15% worried about Kentucky. Reed Shepherd is that guy. Let's move on to North Carolina after their loss against UConn. We are 20% worried about North Carolina. Not very high on the Worry Wart Meter. I see a lot of them this year. I see a lot in their team this year that I did see in them last year, which is where the 20% worries me. I've never been worried about their talent. They are so talented. They are better than they are last year, don't get me wrong, but they need to go on that court and expect to win every time and play as hard as they can every time they step foot on the court. I don't see it as of now. I need to see Hubert Davis get his team together a little bit more, stop playing as much one-on-one ball. They have all the pieces. I'm only 20% worried about them. I think they will be all right. Let's move on to Florida Atlantic against their loss against Illinois. I am 25% worried about Florida Atlantic. Not very worried at all. They have a ton of talent. They can play with anyone in the country. The only thing that worries me about this team is how much they struggle when Vlad Golden goes to the bench. He got in foul trouble against Illinois. If he's in any foul trouble in any game of March Madness, they could be on upset alert. John L. Davis, Elijah Martin, they're very fast, but they're going to play other fast guards in the NCAA tournament. Vlad Golden is such an important piece to this team. I can still see them winning the NCAA title. I can also see them getting upset early if Golden is in foul trouble or, God forbid, they get an injury going into March Madness. Only 25% worried about Florida Atlantic. Now let's talk about Michigan, our highest Worry Wart team. We have them 95% on our Worry Wart Meter. They're 4-5 on the year. And I just got a note. I saw a tweet. I don't remember who put it out. They put a graphic of Michigan versus Michigan State basketball game this year. And it was just labeled in the middle of the graphic, the Battle of Mid. And I thought that was pretty funny. Both teams so disappointing as of right now. But anyways, they have lost a few close games, which gives me a little bit of hope, which is why I'm not 100% worried about them. But this team is just so frustrating to watch. They play so much one-on-one basketball. They don't look like a team. Doug McDaniel, their point guard, is an absolute star. He has the ability to take over a game. But this Michigan team just cannot win games. I'm extremely worried about them. I don't think they make the tournament this year. They're 4-5 as of now. Something really needs to change. Finally, let's talk about Texas, the game where they just lost to Marquette. We are 50% worried about Texas. We could lean either way. As we talked about in the highlights, Max Abmas had a huge game against Marquette, and they still got killed. They're currently all the way down to 33rd at KenPom as of now. We'll see more about them when they enter Big 12 play. Honestly, I could see this team making a run at the Big 12, or I could see them going sub 500 in the Big 12. I can't tell yet. They're very inconsistent. I think they have a slight disadvantage going into Big 12 play because they haven't beaten any good teams yet. As we talked about, their 2 losses are the only good games they played. We'll see how it goes for Texas. We are 50% worried about the Texas Longhorns. Everyone loves a good underdog story. Let's get into some mid-major madness, a new section on this show. On Tuesday night, December 5th, San Diego State visited Grand Canyon, and that Grand Canyon atmosphere was incredible. They say it's the greatest party on earth. It is. That whiteout game, it was nuts. Fans were crowd surfing, and Grand Canyon beat San Diego State 79-73. That place was incredible. They stormed the court. What a great atmosphere and a great win for Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is currently the favorite to win the WAC. We may be seeing them in the NCAA tournament. I could see them being good enough as a 12, 13, or 14 seed. We'll see how it goes. Moving on, we cannot talk about mid-majors this year and not talk about Princeton. They beat Drexel to move to 9-0 on the year. They have a 3-man spread that is worth noting of Xavion Lee, Matt Alico, and Caden Pierce. Xavion Lee's their leading scorer. He averages 19.5 a game, while Alico averages 17, and Pierce averages a double-double, 16 points, 10.6 rebounds. Watch out for Princeton. They're getting votes in the AP poll. They're coming off that run last year. Watch out for Princeton. Finally, Delaware traveled to Xavier and beat them 87-80 to move to 6-3. A lot of mid-major madness on Tuesday night. We'll see how some of these teams do in their conference tournament, and hopefully they can make a run in the March Madness. Let's get into this week's hierarchy of hoops, where if you're new here, we update the top 32 teams in the nation every single week. Let's start with number 1. We have Arizona. After Purdue's loss, they are without a doubt the number 1 team in the country right now. At number 2, we do have Purdue, which is separate from the AP poll, where they have them at number 4. We have a very similar ranking to the AP poll this week, which could be seen as a good thing, could be not. 3, we have Kansas. 4, Houston. 5, UConn. Very similar throughout the rest of the list, but just a few more things to note. We dropped FAU all the way down to 15 after their loss to Illinois, who we moved up to 14, right above FAU. We have Wisconsin all the way up to 16 after their win against Michigan State, who we dropped out of the rankings for our first time. We are no longer giving them the benefit of the doubt. Oklahoma's up to 19 after their dominating performance against Providence. And the team that took Michigan State place in our top 32 is Indiana. After a 7-1 start, we have them ranked at 30 as of now. That is our hierarchy of hoops for this week of college basketball. We at Bracket Science just released our first bracketology of the year. To check out the full list of teams in the tournament as of right now, go check those out on Twitter and Facebook. Our Twitter is at Bracket Science with 2 S's in science. And our Facebook is at Bracket Science, 2 words. Let's go over a few notable things in our list. Starting with the 1 seeds, we have Arizona as the top overall seed without a doubt, followed by Purdue, Kansas, and Houston, barely beating out UConn as the last number 1 seed. Our first 2 seed is UConn. We'll see if those are interchangeable throughout the year. UConn, followed by Baylor, Marquette, and Gonzaga. Those are the top 8 teams as of now. But let's move on to what everyone is curious about, the bubble watch. Our last 4 in, the teams that would be playing in the first 4 games. Reminder, this list came out on Tuesday. We have Oregon as the first four team, along with Villanova, who we are now dropping out. I would move UCLA now into the first four games. Mississippi State, also a first four team, along with Utah State. The last four byes, teams that are in the tournament that do not need to play in the first four games, we have Indiana, we have Kansas State, Ole Miss, and Cincinnati. Moving on to the teams that did not make the tournament, our first four out. San Diego State. This was a highly controversial one. I haven't seen San Diego State being a good enough team, better than even an Oregon, Mississippi State, or Utah State, to be in the tournament. Next up, we have Colorado, South Carolina, and we now move Villanova down to the first four out. Our next four out, we have Iowa, Rutgers, New Mexico, and Utah. These are some of the bubble teams. Obviously will change throughout the year, but as of right now, this is our bracketology. For the entire list, go check it out on Twitter once again at Bracket Science with 2 S's or Facebook at Bracket Science. Let's take a look at this weekend of college hoops. Starting today, we'll call it a long weekend on Thursday. Tonight at 7:30 on ESPNU, a rivalry game. Iowa travels to Iowa State. Both teams near the bubble could use a big win. I currently have Iowa out of the tournament and Iowa State in the tournament as of now. Check that out at 7:30 on ESPNU. That is the only notable game today. Nothing great on Friday. Tiny games. Saturday's the day we want to talk about some huge games starting at 12 o'clock on CBS. Number 20 Illinois visits number 17 Tennessee. Terrence Shannon speed versus Tennessee's elite defense. Give me the Volunteers at home. I think Tennessee wins this game. They are going to be hyped up. Tennessee played a very tough schedule. That is only going to make them better and prepared for Terrence Shannon and Illinois at 12 o'clock. Moving on at 1:30, we have now unranked Alabama taking on number 4 Purdue in Toronto on Fox. This is a homecoming game for Zach Edey. Being from Canada, expect a huge fan base there. At 2 o'clock is Auburn versus Indiana. This game takes place in Georgia, and it is on ESPN2. Auburn and Indiana both comfortably in our tournament as of right now in our bracketology. And 3:15 is the game of the day. Number 23, blazing hot Wisconsin at number 1, Arizona on ESPN. I expect Arizona to be favored anywhere between 8.5 to 11.5 points in this game. Wisconsin's blazing hot. Give me Wisconsin with the points in this game. Wisconsin has a big win over Virginia. They beat Marquette, and they just beat Michigan State in their last 5 games. Give me Wisconsin in this game. I expect a great matchup here. Moving on to the 4 o'clock game, Arkansas takes on number 19 Oklahoma at Oklahoma on ESPN2. Arkansas 6-3 on the year. They beat Duke. A little bit disappointing for their standards as of now, and Oklahoma has exceeded their standards. We'll see how this game goes. I'm taking the Sooners at home. The Sooners look good. Moving on, 4 o'clock, a battle of 2 unbeaten teams. Number 24 Clemson, after their win against South Carolina last night, visits TCU on FS1. TCU still unbeaten, even though maybe they shouldn't be. If you caught our Bad Beats segment last week where they hit a buzzer beater where their man clearly stepped out of bounds. But nevertheless, still undefeated. That's at 4 o'clock on Fox Sports 1 on Saturday. At 5:15, a rivalry game. Missouri at number 2 Kansas. Allen Fieldhouse is going to be electric in this rivalry game. Give me Kansas by 1,000,000 at home. I'm riding with Dickinson and Kevin McCullough. This will be a great environment and a great game to watch. Catch that on ESPN. A flying under the radar game is St. Mary's at Colorado State, the number 13 team in the nation, at 6:30 on CBS Sports Network. St. Mary's needs a win bad to even be considered for an at-large bid in the tournament. They're 4-5 right now. They just got a nice win over Cleveland State. I'm taking St. Mary's with the points. I expect Colorado State to be giving quite a few points in this game. I think St. Mary's still has that firepower. Colorado State has not looked as good as of late. They still have Isaiah Stevens. I think Colorado State wins the game, but I do like St. Mary's with the points. Another game where St. Mary's was projected so good in the preseason and Colorado State was not, and they have flipped just like that Oklahoma-Arkansas game. I'm excited to watch that game. That's 6:30 on Saturday on CBS Sports Network. At 7 o'clock, our final game we'll talk about. We just replaced Villanova with UCLA as our first four in for the bracketology segment of Bracket Science. And this is a game where UCLA visits Villanova. We'll see who can prove me wrong. This game is on Fox at 7 o'clock. Two teams need a win desperately bad. UCLA just barely beat a poor UC Riverside team by one. And Villanova obviously lost in heartbreak fashion against Kansas State. A great slate on Saturday. Everyone check those games out. Thanks to everyone for choosing us as your listen into the college basketball world. We really appreciate all our listeners. As always, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Bracket Science with 2 S's and Facebook at Bracket Science. 2 words where we post big games, highlights, big events coming up, everything college basketball. We will be back early Sunday morning to recap this huge day of college basketball on Saturday. Thanks again for listening. Hope everyone has a good rest of their Thursday.